My name is Kelly.
And my name is Will.
We are two Florida attorneys
Who love our 5 dogs.
and 2 cats.
And love listening to true crime.
Mainly me.
So I hope you enjoy our show as we delve into all things spooky.
This is For Crime's Sake. Good morning. I hope everyone is doing well.
We have Winston with us today in the studio, aka the little Chug baby.
And he is just so excited. Besides going on walks and eating his breakfast and dinner, this may be his favorite activity.
So Kelly, what is on the docket this week?
Well, I am hoping to play more cornhole. Will and I just bought a cornhole set, and it's pretty fun, and the dogs think it is such a great time to chase after the bags when we throw them, don't they?
They do. And if you're not from the Southeast and you are confused about what cornhole is, it's the beanbag game where you throw it through those things with the boards with a hole in it. I don't know what you call it other places, but I don't think everyone
maybe it's
calls
bags.
Yeah, I don't think everyone calls it cornhole, but that's what we're talking about.
And what about you, Will?
I am hopefully going to get to finish setting up my Hue play lights. I recently got a sync box and some nice color gradient lighting for behind our TV, and it can sync to what's on the screen, which is super cool. And so I'm hopefully going to finish putting that whole ecosystem together.
Very nice. That will make, when we watch the movies, a little bit more enjoyable.
Very immersive.
So this week we are covering the murder in room 1046, and it is just a crazy case. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I know nothing about this one. I don't think I've ever heard of it. All I can think of is 1408, which is a Stephen King short story, and I know it's not that.
Well, then I'm actually really excited right now because I wasn't sure if you knew like a little bit. Okay, this would be good then. Lots of twists and turns, and the bizarre events happened over the course of just 3 days.
Looking forward to it.
Sources for this episode are allthat'sinteresting.com, chschipper.com, thelineup.com, ranker.com, historicmysteries.com, and kansascitymag.com. So heads up, this is our oldest case so far.
I'm interested to see what that's going to be like.
So on January 2nd, 1935, at around 1:20 p.m., a man checked into the President Hotel, which was located in Kansas City, Missouri, not Kansas City, Kansas.
And a lot of folks don't know that there are 2 of those with the same name, and you can see them across the water from each other.
And I did not know that, and that's a fun fact.
Put that in your back pocket for a rainy day.
And I'm going to post a picture of this hotel on our website at forcrimesake.com and our social media. So the man asked specifically for an interior room on a high floor, and the name he checked in under was Roland T. Owen. And the staff took notice of several things right away. First off, the man appeared to be well dressed. He had a pretty significant scar on his forehead and cauliflower ear, which, for anyone who doesn't know, cauliflower ear is a deformity of the outer ear after an injury when the cartilage in the outer ear overgrows. So the result is a bulbous deformity.
It happens when you get hit in the side of the face a lot and you get some breaking of the skin there, and then that gets infected and the whole thing inflames and it has to drain. It's real nasty, but very obvious.
And it's very commonly seen in professional athletes like boxers or wrestlers.
Yeah, it's a fighting injury.
So a bellboy by the name Randolph Props escorts him to his room, which was on the 10th floor, and it faced the courtyard rather than the outside streets.
So
And
he got his interior room.
he did, and this was room 1046. The bellboy remembers Roland complaining about another nearby hotel's prices, and the hotel he was talking about was the Malbec.
Okay.
And Roland, interestingly enough, hadn't brought any luggage with him to stay the night.
That's odd.
But when they get to the room, he did take out a comb, a hairbrush, and toothpaste
Just from his coat pocket?
from his overcoat.
No kidding.
Yes.
Huh. Okay.
So Randolph, the bellhop, leaves the room and goes to get the key for the room for Roland. So he returns to give it to Roland, and then Roland leaves the hotel shortly after. And it's unknown where he went. The next day, which was January 3rd, Mary Soptic, the hotel maid, stopped by around noon to clean Roland's room. And this was typically a good time to clean since most people were out for lunch. But when she got to room 1046, the door was locked from the inside. So Mary knocks on the door and Roland opens it. And Mary enters the room to find it almost completely dark, despite the
fact that it was noon.
Yeah, it's just
It's the middle of
lunchtime.
the day. Okay. Odd.
The shades were drawn, and the only light was coming from a small table lamp.
Okay.
So Mary does her thing. You know, she's cleaning, and she's getting ready to bounce. And as she's, getting ready to leave, he asks her not to lock the door because he has a friend coming over. So Mary agrees and leaves the door unlocked on her way out.
I'm just saying, Mary, good, dedicated employee. I probably would have bailed.
Oh, and this is not the last you're going to see of how Mary's a trooper. She's a hard worker.
Mary's a trooper. Okay.
4 hours later, Mary goes back to room 1046 to bring clean towels. And we need to give another shout out to Mary here because, yeah, she is good at her job. I mean, it is hard to get towels when you ask for them. And here she is bringing them without Roland even requesting them.
Right? Think about today's world. It's like, I'd like towels and room service. And it's like, well, you might be waiting till next week. We'll get to it when we get to it. But
Yes.
not Mary.
Nope.
God love her.
So Mary gets to the room and finds the door still unlocked.
Okay.
So she enters, and Roland is fully clothed, laying on his bed, seemingly, asleep. And the bed is made at this point, so he's sleeping on a made bed.
Okay.
So she sees a note on the bedside table that reads, "Dawn, I will be back in 15 minutes. Wait."
Okay. We don't know anyone named Don yet, so that's interesting.
So Mary, leaves and returns the next morning around 10:30 a.m. And this is January 4th, 2 days now after Roland checked into the hotel. So Mary is trying to make the bed. And again, this is a time when most people are out of their rooms.
Right.
And when she gets to room 1046, she finds the door locked from the outside, which indicated that he was out.
Yeah. Okay.
But when she used her master key to enter the room, there is old Roland sitting in the chair in the corner in the dark.
What a weird dude. What is he up to?
But, not to be deterred, Mary goes in and she starts straightening up. And while she's there, the phone rings. And Roland answers it. And
So Roland's not dead in the corner.
no,
That's exciting.
Roland is not. And she hears, obviously Roland's end of the conversation. So she hears, "No, Dawn, I don't want to eat. I'm not hungry. I just had breakfast." And then he says again, "No, I'm not hungry." So Mary obviously only heard, Roland's end of the conversation. So that's all we know about that. The call ends, and Roland, for the first time now, starts talking to Mary.
So for 2 days, Mary has just been coming in, doing her job, cleaning up, and Roland's just chilling in the corner being creepy.
Yeah, up until this point, they haven't had an actual conversation.
So weird. Okay.
So he asked her about her job and the hotel, including what type of people stay there. He also, again, mentions the high prices of the nearby hotel that he had mentioned to Randolph, the bellhop, the first night.
Okay. Weird.
And Mary is definitely uncomfortable by this point, and
I would be too.
And she quickly finishes and leaves the room. And Mary realizes after she leaves that someone must have locked Roland in his room since it was locked from the outside.
That's weird. So, is it possible that Don locked Roland inside and then called to try and get him some breakfast? This is weird.
Yes.
You weren't kidding. This is weird. I want to jump ahead in my mind, but I don't know what's going to happen.
So later that day, Mary again brings fresh towels to room 1046. And when she knocks on the door, she hears two distinct voices. And a deep voice tells her they already have clean towels. But Mary knew this wasn't true because she had removed the towels when she was there earlier.
Mary is too diligent to be lied to. Don't try it.
But, now Mary's like not trying to interrupt whatever's going on.
Clearly.
So she bails. Mary would later describe Roland as worried about something or afraid, and this would be her last interaction with Roland. So this same day, and we're still on January 4th, 2 more guests arrive at the hotel. The first one was Jean Owen, no relation to Roland.
Who was also checked in under the name
Roland
Owen.
T. Owen, yeah.
Okay.
But no relation. And Jean was in the city to see her boyfriend. Unfortunately, she had been feeling sick and decided, to stay the night at a hotel rather than driving home. Jean was given the key to room 1048, which was right next door to Roland.
And coincidentally is the same as 1408. It adds up to 13.
Interesting. So she later reported to police that she had heard a bunch of noise during the night. She heard a mixture of men and, women talking.
So there's just like a party in Roland's room.
And some cursing. I don't know how much, some. And Jean also heard a scuffle and possibly a gasping noise.
Oh my God.
But she assumed it was someone snoring.
Well, let's hope.
So here's the thing. She considered calling the front desk, but chose not to do so in the end.
Okay.
But Jean wasn't feeling well, so let's,
That's true. We'll cut Jean some slack. Yeah. That's fair.
The second hotel guest to arrive that day was described as a commercial woman, which is a 1930s way of describing a sex worker.
The 1930s were so diplomatic.
Right? And this woman would frequent the rooms of male hotel guests late in the evening. And originally, she had come to the hotel looking for a man in room 1026. But the woman was having a hard time finding him, and she had been searching for this man for well over an hour and had searched multiple floors for him. But eventually, she didn't find him. She gave up and went home. So the next morning, and it is now January 5th, the hotel's telephone operator calls the bellhop, who was Harold Pike, to inform him that the phone in room 1046 had been off the hook for 10 minutes. So Harold goes up to room 1046, and there is a do not disturb sign hung up on the door.
Okay.
So he knocks on the door, and Roland tells him to come in.
Oh, so Roland didn't have that strong a feeling about being disturbed. Okay.
No. But Harold couldn't because the door was locked. And when he mentions this to Roland, he gets no response. So Harold then yells through the door for Roland to just hang up the phone. And it seems like Harold believed Roland was possibly drunk and had inadvertently knocked the phone off the hook.
Okay.
But about an hour and a half later, the phone was still off the hook.
This is so weird. Nobody is bothered by the fact that Roland doesn't, he says come in and then just doesn't move to open the door. This is crazy.
So Harold now at this point goes back up to Roland's hotel room. But this time, he's like, enough is enough. And he lets himself in with his master key.
Good.
But this time, he had no idea what was waiting for him.
Oh boy.
Roland was lying on the bed, completely naked.
Oh my goodness. Honestly, not what I thought you were going to say.
So Harold is, caught off guard, fairly so, and wanted to get out of there ASAP. Like, he's ready to book it.
He's not looking to just chill with naked Roland on his bed.
No, he is not.
Goodness.
So he grabbed the phone and put it back on the hook and he booked it. And he did report this to his manager. So another hour goes by and the operator calls Harold yet again to report the phone being off the hook.
How is this even happening? Like, first off, I guess that's a very 1930s thing, but with the operators just checking in constantly, like, good Lord, it's wild.
But this time, when Harold entered the hotel room, he found something much worse than before. Just when there was a strange naked man on a bed. He found a badly injured Owen on his hands and knees a few feet from the door.
Was he still naked? So weird.
The room was dark, and when he turned on the lights, he saw that blood was everywhere. On bed sheets, on towels, even the walls.
This was a bad hour.
This was. So Harold calls the police right away, and the police arrive, and it seems as though Roland was actually somewhat coherent.
How crazy.
So they are trying to ascertain, what happened and who had done this to him, and Roland responds with nobody, and that he had just fallen against the tub.
Is Roland a mobster? I'm sure we're getting there, but it feels to me like Roland's a mobster.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. So after, Roland was taken to the hospital, and it was learned that he had been tortured ruthlessly.
Oh, my goodness.
His neck, arms, and legs showed signs of having been restrained. It appeared, by some kind of cord. There were stab wounds in his chest, multiple stab wounds, and he had a fractured skull as well as a punctured lung.
Oh my gosh.
So this
wasn't like at first when I was thinking he was restrained, like maybe this was a fetish sex act gone wrong, but stabs to the chest, I don't think that typically qualifies as a sex act.
Oh, no.
No.
Shortly after Roland was brought to the hospital, he was pronounced dead. Here's the weird part.
As though it's not weird up till now.
Yes, it gets weirder. The doctors believed that Roland had sustained injuries prior to the bellhop's first trip up to his room. They believed he had tried multiple times to call for help. Hence the phone repeatedly being taken off the hook.
So then why does he say nobody when people get there?
And how would you not notice all those wounds on a naked man on a bed?
That's wild.
So police start investigating, and they realize that there are 0 clothes in Roland's hotel room.
It's so weird across the board. Started
no
that
clothes,
way.
yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing related to clothing was the label of a necktie.
What?
His hairbrush, comb, and toothpaste that he brought with him, gone.
What?
The soap and toothpaste provided by the hotel, also gone. And no sign of a murder weapon could be found.
This is nuts.
In terms of evidence, the only thing found were 4 fingerprints on the telephone stand. Police believe the fingerprints came from a female because they were small prints, but they have never been identified. But a safety pin, sulfuric acid, a hairpin, and an unlit cigarette were in the room.
And that sounds like you're listing off the intro to a MacGyver episode.
Yes.
Like, what a weird smattering of things. There's no clothing left behind. There's no hair or fibers left behind. And just this weird smattering of things. Bizarre.
Police also couldn't find any proof that Roland T. Owens had ever existed. They believed he had used an alias to check into the hotel. A man comes forward as the investigation's going, and his name is Robert Lane. He told police that he picked up a man from the President Hotel on January 4th around 11 p.m. He said the man was confused and manic. He had on pants and an undershirt, and he had a deep scratch on his arm. His arms were dripping in blood, and he said, "I'll kill that man tomorrow." He asked Robert to drop him off where he could catch a taxi, and Robert believed the man to be Roland.
Is this just what the 30s were like? People were just riding around, bleeding everywhere, telling cabbies that they were going to murder some people or, kill them in the future. And it's all fine for the most part until someone ends up dead in a hotel room.
Yes, it's wild series of events. So remember that expensive hotel Roland complained about to the first bellhop Randolph and the hotel maid Mary?
Yeah, he seemed real fussed about that.
He was. The hotel came forward and said that a man matching Roland's description had indeed stayed there January 1st, the night before he stayed at the Pennsylvania Hotel. The man had checked in under the name Eugene K. Scott. But police could never find a record that a person with that name existed either.
And you guys can't see me right now, but I'm making my shocked face.
Yes. So the case finally went cold, and the detectives wanted to bury the man, to lay him to rest. Mm-hmm. So they organized a small funeral. But
that's pretty good of them, honestly. It's a nice thing.
But the funeral home received an anonymous call from a man who said he would send money for the mystery man's funeral and that he was doing it for his sister. He also said he would send 13 American Beauty roses. When asked what his connection was to Roland, he replied, Owen hadn't played the game fair, and cheaters usually get what's coming to them. And curiously, a donation showed up at the funeral home, and it was enough to cover the funeral costs, and 13 American Beauty roses were sent along with it. Also included was a letter, and it read, "Love forever, Luis." And the funeral took place at Memorial Park Cemetery, and the only mourners were detectives.
This is so bizarre. You weren't kidding. This is so weird.
A year later, a woman named Ruby Ogletree called the police and identified the man as her son, Artemis Ogletree. She told them he was just 17 years old.
Oh my goodness.
She recognized him from a picture of the scar. She told police it was caused by a grease burn when he was only 11 months old. And she said he had been missing for years.
Wild.
He had left Birmingham, Alabama in 1934 to hitchhike to California to pursue his dream of becoming a professional boxer.
And there you go. Cauliflower ear.
Yep, exactly.
That would make a lot of sense.
It looks as though police believed her. What's weird, though, is that Ruby had received some letters claiming to be from her son. They said he was in Egypt, and some of them, though, were written after the man in room 1046 was dead.
That's very, very curious for a lot of reasons.
And here's what's interesting, because obviously the thought is, this possibly is his killer.
Yeah. Or it's just the wrong person.
The letters, though, that were sent after his death were strikingly different than those from before, which focused primarily on a prospective job and stuff like that. They were handwritten, but the ones sent after included a lot of slang, and they were typed.
I was going to ask about the letters before and after if we knew a comparison between the handwriting, but it sounds like the handwriting wasn't at issue.
And Roland didn't know how to type.
Well, okay then. That's yeah, okay.
In 2003, Dr. John Horner, who had written an in-depth account of the murder in room 1046, received a call from an out-of-state number. The caller said they had found a box consisting of many papers about the case in an elderly person's home. They also said that an object mentioned in the newspaper article was also in the box. But frustratingly, we don't know who the person was or what the object was that was found.
Oh, that is so frustrating because that is really, really interesting for a bunch of reasons. And one of the fascinating things that can happen when you clean out an elderly person's house.
So the case remains to this day unsolved. We have posted a picture of Artemis on our website and social media.
Almost 90 years, and this has remained unsolved.
Yes.
That's wild.
But of course, there are some theories for this case. T.J. Higgins, chief of detectives, was convinced that a serial killer named Joseph Ogden was responsible for the murder. Ogden had murdered a man named Oliver George Cynical. He had shot George, dismembered him, and stuffed his naked body into a trunk steamer.
Okay.
Ogden had been in and out of prison and had stayed in an insane asylum, including one in Birmingham, Alabama, which, if you remember, is where Artemis Ogletree was from.
Okay. So that's not a bad choice of suspect. At first, I was a little skeptical, thinking maybe they were just trying to match the MOs, because I don't think that's that close. But
I haven't even told you all of it. Ogden had previously used the alias Donald Kelso.
Oh, okay. So that's maybe Don that he was talking to and left a note for.
It's possible. And then he had also written to the victim's mom to tell her that her son was okay and just traveling in Europe.
Oh, okay. Well, that sounds very plausible to me.
Ruby Ogletree believed a man, so obviously you remember Artemis's mom, but she believed that a man named Joe Simpson had been the one to kill her son. And he had actually been the person to leave home with Artemis.
How so?
So, what do you mean? They left together to go to California.
Gotcha. Okay.
And he said that at some point during this, she had spoken with Joe, and he had told her that he had a badly typed letter from Artemis to give to her. And as I told you earlier,
Artemis couldn't type.
He couldn't type.
So that feels really sketchy.
He also, when he was speaking with Ruby, told her that the case would never be solved.
What?
So she believes that he is also, the possible killer. Although police investigated him and didn't pursue him as a viable suspect.
Very odd.
And you mentioned another theory that I've seen floating around was that it was a mob hit.
That's the one that makes the most sense to me, just because of
Don. That's a typical mob boss.
That would be a typical mob boss name. The conversations, the fact that it all seemed to be rather genteel, even to the funeral, with money being sent and roses, and someone saying he didn't play fair. The 1930s, obviously, mob activity in the United States was kind of peaking because it was in the time directly following Prohibition, and that was when a lot of mob families came to great power in the U.S. because they were moving alcohol illegally, and that was more so understood to be their style, is that it was like this genteel, almost gentlemanly crime that they were doing, and everything about this fits that mold for me fairly well. Obviously, I don't have anything more than what we know and what we've said here to base that off of, but using aliases, you've got physical fights, you've got these sort of odd-seeming disagreements, communications between the parties, and then he's just dead and doesn't want to rat anybody out as he's dying.
Yeah, that's... and
it feels like he was afraid of something, and if he was afraid of something as he was dying, it makes me think organized crime.
And that's a strong possibility, I think, with everything taken into consideration. There's also a theory that this was some sort of sex, like, meetup type thing.
Which I can kind of understand where people would get that from the woman in the room next door who thought it was...
the possible fingerprints that were female.
A lot of things indicate there might have been men and women there throughout those couple of days.
Was the woman, and that's the thing, was the woman just involved in it, like with somebody else? Like, was it...
Yeah, it is odd, and it's odd that there were no other sets of fingerprints found. That means they deliberately wiped it down. They took his clothes, they took his toothbrush, his toothpaste. So these weren't just people who showed up randomly, accidentally killed somebody in a fit of rage, and left a mess behind them. They clearly...
They took everything that was in there, basically, that they felt was of any value.
And bound and tortured him, and then left him behind, locked in his room. I mean, just everything about this feels like organized crime to me. And who knows? I mean, I hope that something someday will tell us more about that. 90 years is a long time without an answer.
Oh, yes. And I'm very confused about how the bellhop was in there and didn't see the wounds. If that's the case,
stab wounds to his chest.
If he had really been calling for help, I mean, that just seems bizarre.
It is bizarre. You were right. Everything about this case is bizarre. A lot of weird twists and turns.
So let us know your theories about who you think killed Roland T. Owen / Artemis Ogletree and why. And please give us a 5-star review if you enjoyed this episode wherever you listen. And Will, how proud of Winston are you?
I am so proud of him. He has been a little angel baby, and it's been a long episode, so he's done really well.
Shockingly well behaved.
Shockingly.
All right, bye guys.